The world of high finance, fortunes made and lost in the blink of an eye, power brokers chasing the dream of wealth. Trust is the most valuable currency. Bernie Madoff, the mastermind behind a historic financial fraud. His crimes left countless victims in their wake. Join us as we unravel the layers of his deception. Bernie Madoff. The name evokes greed, deceit, and the fragility of trust. Before the scandal, Madoff was a respected figure in finance. He started his firm in 1960 with a few $1,000s. Known for generating consistent returns, he attracted wealthy clients. Madoff became a prominent figure on Wall Street, but behind the respectability, a darker truth was brewing. His strategy was a house of cards destined to crumble. At the heart of Madoff's scheme was an irresistible promise: guaranteed returns. In the volatile world of investing, the idea of steady, consistent profits is alluring. Madoff offered returns that seemed to defy market fluctuations. This consistency was a red flag, a warning sign that something was amiss. Madoff's scheme was a classic Ponzi scheme, destined to collapse. Bernie Madoff's early years on Wall Street were far from glamorous. He started small, trading penny stocks, but even then, he possessed a sharp mind for numbers. He quickly learned the ins and outs of the market. As his capital grew, so did his ambitions. Madoff understood he needed to move beyond penny stocks. He set his sights on attracting wealthy individuals and institutional clients. The art of cultivating trust. Bernie Madoff was a master of this. He understood that in the world of high finance, perception was everything. He meticulously crafted a persona of quiet confidence and understated brilliance, projecting an image of a man who was above the fray, someone who operated with an almost mystical understanding of the markets. He shunned the limelight, rarely giving interviews or attending lavish industry events. He cultivated an air of mystery around his investment strategies, claiming they were too complex, too nuanced for outsiders to grasp. This only served to further enhance his mystique, making him seem like a financial wizard who possessed a secret recipe for success. Madoff was also a master networker, leveraging his connections within the Jewish community and other elite circles to gain access to potential investors. He understood the power of social proof. If he could convince a few influential individuals to trust him with their money, others would follow suit. He was generous with his time and money, donating to charitable causes and cultivating relationships with those in positions of power. He understood that philanthropy wasn't just about giving back. It was about building a reputation as a pillar of the community, someone who could be trusted implicitly. The seeds of deception. It's unclear exactly when Bernie Madoff's legitimate investment business morphed into a full-blown Ponzi scheme. Some speculate that the seeds of deception were sown early on, perhaps driven by a desire to impress clients and maintain an image of unwavering success. Others believe that Madoff initially operated within the bounds of the law, but his ambition and greed eventually outpaced his legitimate returns. What is clear is that somewhere along the way, Madoff crossed a line. He began fabricating trades, creating fictitious accounts, and generating fake statements to show his clients the consistent, impressive returns he had promised them. He was robbing Peter to pay Paul, using money from new investors to fund the payouts of earlier investors. As his scheme grew in size and complexity, so too did the web of lies he spun to conceal it. He compartmentalized his business, keeping his illegal activities hidden from most of his employees. He intimidated those who dared to question his methods, using a combination of charm, threats, and his formidable reputation to silence any dissent. The pressure to maintain the facade of success must have been immense. Each new investor, each request for a withdrawal, brought with it the risk of exposure. Yet, Madoff pressed on, driven by a toxic cocktail of greed, ego, and a belief that he was somehow too smart, too powerful to get caught. Bernie Madoff's genius was his ability to create the illusion of success. He understood that investors craved exclusivity and above-average returns. He concocted a secretive investment strategy, claiming it was too complex for ordinary investors. He spoke of a split-strike conversion strategy, a legitimate but rarely used method. This approach, he claimed, generated steady returns, even in volatile markets. In reality, Madoff wasn't investing his clients' money at all. He deposited it into a single bank account, funding his lavish lifestyle. The art of secrecy, how Madoff kept his scheme hidden in plain sight. Madoff's cunning and understanding of human psychology allowed his Ponzi scheme to go undetected for decades. He exploited the trust and willingness of investors to overlook red flags. His operation was remarkably simple, depositing clients' money into a single bank account. Lax regulatory oversight by the SEC allowed him to operate with impunity. Surrounded by loyalists, dissent was stifled, keeping his fraudulent operation hidden. Section 3. The human factor, why people believed in Bernie despite the red flags. The Madoff scandal is as much a story about human psychology as it is about financial fraud. Madoff was a master manipulator. He played on these desires, promising his clients what they most craved: steady, consistent returns in an unpredictable world. He also benefited from a phenomenon known as affinity fraud, where scammers target specific groups. In Madoff's case, wealthy individuals within the Jewish community and other elite circles. This positive image made it difficult for people to believe that he could be capable of such massive deception. (2008) and the unraveling of a fraudulent empire. The year 2008 will forever be etched in financial history as a time of unprecedented turmoil. The global financial crisis, triggered by subprime mortgages, sent shockwaves through the economy. Markets plummeted, banks teetered, and panic gripped investors worldwide. For Bernie Madoff, the crisis exposed his empire of lies, sending it crashing down. Section 2. The walls close in. Mounting redemptions and the crumbling facade. Redemption requests from panicked investors were pouring in at an alarming rate, far exceeding the cash reserves he had on hand. The house of cards he had so carefully constructed over decades was teetering on the brink of collapse. Madoff's once unwavering confidence began to crumble under the weight of his lies. He became increasingly withdrawn, his demeanor shifting from one of quiet assurance to barely concealed panic. His carefully cultivated persona of control and invincibility was slipping away, revealing the fear and desperation that lay beneath the surface. Rumors began to circulate among Madoff's investors about the stability of his firm. Whispers of impropriety, once easily dismissed, now carried a weight of urgency. Some investors, sensing that something was amiss, attempted to withdraw their funds entirely, only to be met with delays and excuses. The illusion of success was shattering, and the truth, like a monstrous shadow, loomed ever larger. Behind the closed doors of his opulent Manhattan office, Madoff's world was falling apart. The phone calls were relentless, each one a stark reminder of the impending disaster. His carefully crafted web of lies was unraveling thread by thread, and he was running out of time and options. The end was near, and Madoff knew it. Madoff's world implodes, leaving a trail of devastation. The end came swiftly and brutally. On December 10, 2008, Bernie Madoff confessed to his sons that his firm was a giant Ponzi scheme. The FBI arrested Madoff the next day. His arrest sent shockwaves through the financial world. Investors were left reeling, their life savings wiped out. Madoff's firm was forced into bankruptcy. Charities reliant on Madoff's returns closed their doors. The scandal was a profound betrayal of trust. The Madoff family torn apart by betrayal. Bernie Madoff's confession ripped through his family, leaving devastation and despair. For Ruth, the revelation shattered the illusion of their life together. Their sons, Mark and Andrew, were thrust into an unimaginable nightmare. They lost their inheritance and faith in their father. The Madoff name became a symbol of greed and deceit. The emotional toll proved unbearable for Mark. His death was a stark reminder of the devastating human cost of Madoff's deceit. Collateral damage, the ripple effect of Madoff's deceit on friends and associates. Bernie Madoff's web of deception ensnared countless friends and associates who had placed their trust and their money in his hands. These were not just faceless investors, they were people who had known Madoff for years, who had considered him a friend. The revelation of his Ponzi scheme shattered their world, wiping out their savings, their dreams, their sense of security. Others, unaware of the true nature of his operation, were left to face the consequences of their association with him. The Madoff scandal served as a stark reminder that financial fraud is not a victimless crime. A community in crisis, the erosion of trust, and the search for answers. The Madoff scandal sent shockwaves through the Jewish community, particularly in New York and Florida. He exploited his shared heritage to gain trust. The revelation of his crimes left a profound sense of betrayal. Many felt personally violated, not only because they had lost money but because their trust had been abused. Synagogues, charities, and foundations faced financial ruin. The scandal sparked a crisis of faith and a questioning of values. It forced a painful reckoning with the dangers of blind trust. There was a collective search for answers and calls for greater transparency. The Madoff scandal served as a painful reminder that trust, once broken, is not easily rebuilt. The long arm of the law, Madoff's day of reckoning. The swiftness and severity of the legal response to Bernie Madoff's crimes reflected the sheer scale of his deception and the outrage it ignited across the globe. Within months of his confession, Madoff found himself facing the full weight of the justice system, his fate sealed by the mountains of evidence against him and the chorus of voices demanding accountability. In March 2009, Madoff pleaded guilty to 11 federal felony counts, including securities fraud, wire fraud, and money laundering. His guilty plea, a stark departure from his initial attempts to downplay his crimes, was seen by some as a tacit acknowledgement of the overwhelming case against him and the futility of mounting a defense. The sentencing hearing, held on June 29, 2009, was a highly charged affair. Victims of Madoff's scheme, their lives upended by his deceit, delivered impassioned statements detailing the financial ruin, emotional distress, and shattered dreams they had endured. They spoke of lost retirements, foreclosed homes, and the erosion of trust that had permeated their lives. Judge Denny Chin, presiding over the case, characterized Madoff's crimes as extraordinarily evil and of epic proportions. He sentenced Madoff to 150 years in federal prison, the maximum sentence allowed under the law, and a symbolic gesture meant to reflect the gravity of his offenses and the enduring impact on his victims. The aftermath and the quest for accountability. The sentencing of Bernie Madoff brought some closure but did little to alleviate the financial devastation. A complex process began to recover assets and distribute funds to those who lost everything. Irving Picard, the court-appointed trustee, faced an uphill battle. Madoff's facade concealed a labyrinthine network, making it nearly impossible to trace funds. Picard's team pursued Madoff's gains globally, filing lawsuits against banks and investors. Clawback lawsuits aimed to recover illegally distributed funds for victims. The Madoff Victim Fund provided some relief, but the amounts recovered were minimal. Section 3. A System Under Scrutiny. Lessons Learned and the Future of Financial Regulation. The Madoff scandal sent shockwaves through the financial world, exposing systemic weaknesses in regulatory oversight and raising profound questions about the safeguards in place to protect investors from fraud. The fact that Madoff's scheme had operated undetected for decades, despite numerous red flags and warnings, highlighted the need for sweeping reforms. In the wake of the scandal, lawmakers and regulators faced mounting pressure to address the shortcomings that had allowed Madoff's fraud to flourish. The Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act, passed in 2010, included provisions aimed at strengthening financial regulations, increasing transparency, and providing greater investor protection. The Securities and Exchange Commission, heavily criticized for its failure to detect and act upon warnings about Madoff's activities, underwent a period of introspection and reform. The agency implemented new rules and procedures designed to enhance its investigative capabilities, improve its oversight of investment advisors, and encourage whistleblowers to come forward without fear of retaliation. The Madoff scandal served as a stark reminder that even in the most sophisticated financial markets, trust is a fragile commodity. It highlighted the importance of robust regulation, vigilant oversight, and a culture of accountability to safeguard the integrity of the financial system and protect investors from those who seek to exploit their trust for personal gain. The allure of control and the illusion of invulnerability. To grasp Bernie Madoff's crimes, delve into his psyche. What drove a respected man to maintain such deceit? Madoff's insatiable need for control dictated his reality. His need for control manifested early on. His Ponzi scheme was the ultimate expression of this desire. As his scheme grew, so did his sense of invulnerability. The longer he operated undetected, the more convinced he became of his brilliance. Bernie Madoff rationalized his actions one lie at a time. He didn't set out to defraud thousands. He believed his strategies would eventually pan out, but as his scheme spiraled, he clung to justifications. Madoff might have thought he was helping his investors. He convinced himself he was smarter than everyone else. His justifications became more elaborate over time. Success clouded his judgment. The accolades reinforced his belief in his exceptionality. He created a world where dissent was silenced. Madoff was a flawed human being consumed by ambition and greed. He became a prisoner of his own lies, leading to his downfall. The true cost of Bernie Madoff's crimes extended far beyond the billions of dollars lost. His actions represented a profound erosion of empathy, a moral bankruptcy that left countless lives shattered. Madoff's victims were real people with hopes, dreams, and aspirations, all cruelly dashed by his callous deceit. Retirees lost their life savings, forced to delay retirement or return to work. Families saw their children's college funds vanish overnight. Charitable organizations were stripped of their endowments. Madoff's actions had a corrosive effect on trust in the financial system and human nature. His legacy is one of unbridled greed and the human cost of moral bankruptcy. Bernie Madoff's meticulously crafted facade of success, painstakingly built over decades, ultimately crumbled under the weight of his own lies. The world watched in astonishment as the man once hailed as a financial wizard was exposed as the architect of one of the most audacious frauds in history. His legacy, forever tarnished by his crimes, serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of trust and the devastating consequences of unchecked greed. Madoff's victims, spanning the globe and representing a cross-section of society, were left to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives. Their stories, each one a testament to the human cost of his crimes, painted a heart-wrenching portrait of financial ruin, emotional distress, and the erosion of faith in those they had once trusted implicitly. The financial system, already reeling from the global crisis of 2008, was further shaken by the Madoff scandal. It exposed vulnerabilities in regulatory oversight, highlighted the dangers of a culture that often prizes profit over integrity, and underscored the need for greater transparency and accountability. Beyond the financial losses, Madoff's actions left a deep scar on the collective psyche, eroding faith in institutions, individuals, and the very systems designed to protect us from harm. His betrayal cut to the core of human relationships, leaving many questioning their own judgment and wondering how someone they had trusted could have perpetrated such a profound deception. The Madoff scandal serves as a stark reminder of the importance of vigilance, critical thinking, and skepticism in finance. It compels us to ask difficult questions and resist the allure of easy money. Investors must conduct thorough due diligence and diversify their portfolios. Be wary of opportunities shrouded in secrecy or promising unrealistic returns. Regulators must strengthen oversight and foster accountability. The financial industry must prioritize transparency and integrity. Lessons from Madoff's deceit can guide us to a more ethical financial future.